Buried in the world's largest desert, researchers have uncovered something that rewrites human history. At first, it seemed like faint scratches on stone, the kind of markings you might overlook in a place so vast and empty. But as the sand was brushed away, the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't random, it was deliberate, it was art. And not just any art, but a window into a world that existed 12,000 years ago. Think about that for a second. 12,000 years. Long before the pyramids rose in Egypt, before Mesopotamia laid claim to being the cradle of civilization, before anyone had ever put words on clay tablets, human beings in the Sahara were already creating something extraordinary. They weren't just surviving, they were recording, remembering, and expressing. What they left behind isn't just decoration, it's evidence, and it could completely change the way we understand the origins of human culture. Because here's the thing, this discovery doesn't fit neatly into the story we've been told. History books often point to a few regions of the world as the first sparks of civilization. But these ancient paintings suggest that maybe, just maybe, we've overlooked something massive. What these rock walls reveal about ancient Africa could force us to rewrite the timeline of human creativity and society itself. And hidden within those images is one detail that shocked researchers the most. We'll get to that in a moment, but once you hear it, you'll never look at the Sahara Desert the same way again. Today, when you think of the Sahara Desert, what comes to mind? A vast expanse of golden dunes stretching endlessly in every direction, the heat so intense that the horizon seems to shimmer, wind howling across barren plains where nothing moves except for the occasional snake or scorpion. It's one of the harshest environments on Earth, dry, lifeless, and unforgiving, a place where survival is measured not in years but in moments. But here's the twist. 12,000 years ago, this same landscape was unrecognizable. Instead of sand, imagine rivers winding their way through valleys. Instead of lifeless plains, picture grasslands stretching as far as the eye could see. Herds of giraffes grazed among the trees, elephants trudged across open savannas, crocodiles basked on the banks of lakes, and hippos splashed in the water. Birds filled the skies, fish swam in the streams, and at the heart of it all, humans thrived. Families settled near rivers, hunters tracked game across fertile ground, and communities began to form in a Sahara that looked more like paradise than desert. That contrast is what makes the discovery of ancient rock art here so breathtaking. The desert is a destroyer of history. Its winds erode, its heat cracks, and its shifting sands bury almost everything in their path. Finding evidence of life this old in such a harsh place is like finding a delicate leaf preserved inside a volcano. It just shouldn't exist, and yet somehow, it does.
The exact site of the discovery lies deep within the desert, in an area so remote that few people ever venture there. For now, we'll just say it's a hidden corner of the Sahara where the rocks themselves have become time capsules. And as we'll soon see, what those stones reveal carries a significance far greater than anyone expected. It all began when a group of explorers ventured into one of the most isolated corners of the Sahara. At first, their mission wasn't to uncover history. They were charting the land, documenting geography, and searching for traces of ancient settlements. But then they stumbled upon something that caught their attention. On the face of a weathered rock wall, half buried under centuries of shifting sand, faint markings began to emerge. As they cleared away the dust and took a closer look, the markings took shape. These weren't scratches from animals or the wind. They were deliberate images, carefully etched and sometimes painted, preserved against all odds. What they saw was breathtaking. The walls told stories. Hunters carrying bows and arrows chasing after herds. Groups of people gathered together, some seemingly engaged in rituals, others simply living their daily lives. The details were stunning. Animals drawn with precision, humans with recognizable postures, scenes that felt alive despite the passage of 12 millennia. It was as if the stones had been waiting all this time to speak. But how could anyone be sure of their age? That's where science stepped in. Researchers used radiocarbon dating on nearby organic material, charcoal from ancient fires, plant remains buried in the same layers. They also studied the style of the artwork, comparing it to other finds across Africa. Together, the evidence pointed to an age of around 12,000 years. That's not just old, that's prehistoric. That's older than writing, older than cities, older than anything we typically associate with civilization. And then came the most shocking revelation of all. The animals in the art weren't desert dwellers. Instead of camels and sand, the rocks showed giraffes stretching high to eat leaves, hippos lounging in water, and crocodiles patrolling rivers. These creatures haven't roamed the Sahara in thousands of years. Their presence on those walls proved that this desert was once a fertile green world, overflowing with life. That was the detail that stunned researchers the most. The Sahara, the harshest desert on Earth, had once been a paradise, and humans had been there to witness it. When researchers studied the panels more closely, they realized this wasn't just art. It was a record of daily life. The images showed hunters moving in groups, bows drawn, chasing antelope across open plains. You could see families gathered together, adults standing with children, sometimes holding hands, sometimes sharing what looked like meals. These weren't random doodles. They were moments captured in stone, snapshots of a world long gone. Some of the scenes hinted at something deeper than survival. Figures arranged in circles, bodies positioned as if in ceremony. Were these people dancing, worshiping, passing down traditions? It suggested a society with not just food and shelter, but culture, ritual, and shared meaning. And that's what shocked historians the most. This wasn't the behavior of scattered nomads barely getting by. This was a thriving community that valued connection, storytelling, and perhaps even spirituality.
The level of sophistication was undeniable. These early Africans used symbolism to communicate, showing animals in exaggerated sizes to stress their importance, or drawing humans in ways that suggested roles within the group. It's almost like they were writing, only instead of words, they used images. In a sense, this was humanity's first visual language, created thousands of years before cuneiform tablets in Mesopotamia or hieroglyphs in Egypt. And here's where the timeline gets interesting. We're taught that civilization's earliest sparks came from the Fertile Crescent or along the Nile, but this art predates both. It suggests that people in the Sahara were already experimenting with complex thought, memory, and meaning long before civilization supposedly began. It raises the question, have we been looking in the wrong place all along? But there's something even stranger carved into these rocks. As you look across different walls, you notice one figure appearing again and again, larger than the others, drawn with features that don't quite match the hunters or families, sometimes wearing what looks like a mask, sometimes looming above the animals. Who was this mysterious figure? Was it a leader, a shaman, a god, or something else entirely? That question has left experts debating for decades, and the possible answers will surprise you. The deeper researchers looked, the stranger the images became. Among the hunters, the families, and the animals were figures that seemed different. They were humanoid, yes, but they didn't look like ordinary people.
Some were drawn towering above the rest, their bodies exaggerated in size as if to show power or importance. Others appeared with masks covering their faces, strange headgear, or elongated features that set them apart from the surrounding community. They weren't hunting, they weren't gathering. They were something else entirely. So who were they? Some scholars argue these were depictions of shamans, spiritual leaders who wore masks and animal skins during rituals. In many traditional African societies, the shaman was seen as the bridge between the physical and the spiritual world. These figures might have been the first attempts to capture that idea in art. Others believe they represent gods or deities, larger-than-life beings who controlled the rivers, the animals, and perhaps even the cycles of rain that kept the Sahara green. But not everyone agrees. A few researchers suggest they might symbolize ancestors, those who had passed on but were still considered present and powerful within the community. And then there are the more controversial theories. Some point out the almost alien-like shapes of certain figures, hinting at the possibility that these drawings reflected encounters with something or someone outside ordinary human experience. Were they visions, visitors, or simply expressions of imagination we can't fully decode? Whatever the explanation, one thing is clear. These mysterious figures may be some of the earliest evidence of organized spiritual belief systems. Before temples, before priests, before written scripture, people here in the Sahara may have already been trying to connect with forces beyond themselves. That makes this art not only a record of life, but also a record of humanity's first steps into belief, ritual, and religion itself. But the story doesn't end there, because hidden in these carvings is one more layer of mystery. Patterns and images that don't just stay in Africa. In fact, they connect to rock art found thousands of miles away, raising a question that still has no clear answer. How could that be possible? As researchers examined the Sahara rock art, they began noticing something remarkable. Certain symbols, motifs, and figures bear striking similarities to rock art found far across the globe, in Australia, South America, and even Europe. Spirals, dancing figures, and animal depictions that look eerily familiar appear in cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. How could such patterns emerge in places with no known contact? This raises a tantalizing question. Did ancient cultures somehow share ideas across continents, or did humans, facing similar challenges and experiences, simply develop similar ways of expressing themselves independently? There's no easy answer, and scholars continue to debate it. Yet the idea that some form of shared human creativity might have existed so early in history is both thrilling and unsettling. It challenges everything we think we know about isolation, communication, and the spread of knowledge in prehistory. Some experts now suggest that before the Sahara dried into the desert we know today, it may have acted as a hub of human culture. Rivers and fertile lands allowed communities to flourish, exchange ideas, and record their knowledge visually. Perhaps these early Africans weren't just surviving, they were innovators, storytellers, and preservers of human thought in a region that, over time, became nearly uninhabitable. And yet, even within these discoveries, there are anomalies. One carving in particular seems almost out of place. Unlike the detailed animals or the ritualistic human figures, this single image defies easy explanation. Its purpose, whether symbolic, ceremonial, or something else entirely, remains a mystery. Some believe it could mark a significant event, others see it as a purely abstract idea. Whatever it is, it leaves us wondering how much of the Sahara's history has yet to be understood, buried just beneath the sand. Over thousands of years, the Sahara underwent a dramatic transformation. What was once a lush, green paradise with rivers, lakes, and thriving wildlife slowly began to dry out. Rainfall diminished, lakes shrank, and grasslands gave way to sand dunes. This wasn't sudden, it happened over centuries, but the effects were profound. Animals disappeared, rivers dried up, and the people who had called this fertile land home faced an impossible choice: adapt or leave. Communities packed up what they could carry and moved toward more hospitable regions. Some migrated to the Nile Valley, others to the edges of West Africa, and still others journeyed toward the Mediterranean. But they didn't leave empty-handed. They carried their culture, their knowledge, their stories, and their artistic traditions with them. The rock art, the rituals, and even the early symbols of spiritual belief traveled, influencing the societies they joined or founded. This forced migration may have been a hidden engine behind some of the world's earliest civilizations. Ancient Egypt, for instance, emerged not long after the Sahara began its desertification, and it's possible that the people moving from these green lands brought with them ideas, skills, and stories that shaped this new society. When we think about the origins of civilization, it's easy to focus on river valleys and cities. But the Sahara's transformation reminds us that human history is far more interconnected and far richer than we often realize. The echoes of this ancient green world can still be traced across Africa and beyond, hidden in art, culture, and memory. These ancient rock paintings are far more than simple images etched into stone. They are windows into the origins of humanity, snapshots of lives lived thousands of years before most of history began. They show us that humans weren't just surviving, they were creating, storytelling, and connecting with the world around them in ways we are only beginning to understand. Africa, long recognized as the cradle of humanity, was also a cradle of creativity, spirituality, and early civilization. These paintings remind us that innovation, belief, and culture didn't begin with the first cities or written records. They were alive in communities thriving in the Sahara long before the first pyramids were built. They challenge the way we've been taught to see history and ask us to reconsider where the roots of human civilization truly lie. And perhaps the most exciting part is that this story is far from over. If 12,000-year-old art is still being uncovered in the sands of the Sahara, who knows what else lies buried, waiting to reshape our understanding of humanity? What other stories, images, and secrets are locked beneath the desert, ready to be discovered? The Sahara is not just a desert. It is a living archive of human ingenuity and survival, and it continues to hold mysteries that could change everything we think we know about our past.